Hi there, welcome back. Well, the lady is finally going to get asked to dance. But before I put this in, I decided to do a full check on this board. I went through the schematic, I tried to understand what was going on here. It's pretty simple actually, nothing too dramatic. But there were quite a few problems. The first one we saw was that there were pieces chipped off here. Those have been glued back. But the consequences of that breaking was not just on the surface of the board itself. It actually went through underneath. Underneath meaning the tracks. And that was the main problem here. But first of all, on this top side, there's nothing that we can see that's too surprising. I can remove the cover. Somebody, if you recall, had bent some parts here. That's been straightened. And what we're looking at here is the FM front end. And as far as I can tell, nobody has been in here, which is, well, yeah, thank God for small blessings, right? Nobody's been in here, it seems. So that didn't require much checking. I did need to check supply points to here. So I did go in there with a multimeter, but I didn't check the actual details of the circuit in this part of the board. I haven't opened that up yet. I'm hoping I don't have to. But that, I think, is not going to be too much of a problem either, if there is a problem in there. But I've done so much on this board, and I'll show you, that I'm really keen to put it in there and ask the lady to dance. So let me show you on the underside what I found. When you first look at it, well, when I first looked at it, I saw a lot of interventions here. There was one wire stuck here floating around with a little insulator at the end. There was solder marks on some of these points over here. There were some ripped tracks over here. Some of the pads have been ripped off. And the first thing that I did was, and this was suggested actually by quite a few viewers in the comments, was to check about this little shield that was floating around on the underside. And yes, it fits nicely in here. It actually fits right on there. And if you look on this side, it's where some of the solder points were. And it also is on that point there where the copper track had been ripped off. So this thing was ripped off for some reason. I don't understand why. So what I've done is I've cleaned it up. I've remade that track, and I had to do it with this a little wire because the copper tape wouldn't work here because I'm going to have to solder that shield back on. I've cleaned up the contacts where this thing solders onto the ground. These are all grounds, by the way, all four of them. I checked. And so that's ready to receive the shield when we're finally done. The other thing was, I checked where every single connection point from that connector came in and tried to follow it through the circuit, and I found quite a few breakages. There were quite a few points where the 25 volts wasn't getting to, and that boiled down to a break on the board over here. There was a crack on the board, and it cracked quite a few tracks, and obviously that broke the connection. It actually breaks the copper track, and you can hardly see it. So I had to do a patch, and I did it again with a piece of 0.6 millimeter silver wire. I decided to do it like that because, again, the copper track, the copper tape, is very, very fragile, and it could just as easily break. So I had to do it a little bit more ruggedly, and I think it's going to work well like this. The other thing I found is there were a lot of dead solder joints on here. So by checking the circuit and checking the continuity between components, I found some of them were getting no contact. So I went through the solder joints that I noticed had been messed with, and I found at least 3 that were iffy, because when I corrected that, the continuity was corrected. So in all, there must have been about a dozen things wrong with this side of the board. And I went through them very, very carefully. There were some points here where there was no components, but obviously somebody had soldered on there. I managed to see on the service manual, there's a drawing of this board. It's pretty dark, but it was good enough to figure out what they were trying to show. And I noticed there are no components populating that section, which means we're fine. Other than that, what else did I find here? Oh, I found out why that supply burnt out originally. I think the fuse must have burnt out originally, and because the fuse burnt out, somebody replaced it with a fuse, but they didn't replace it with the 160 milliamp fuse like they should have. They replaced it with a 1.6 amp fuse, and that burnt out that one resistor and cooked the other one. And I think I know why. If we look at this here, that there, the copper track has been scratched. And this here is when you fit it into the chassis, there are these metal pegs that come through and you twist them. And you're supposed to twist them away from the board. In fact, you're supposed to twist them on the top side. It seems that somebody left that metal tag twisted in and then forced this down. Now that is a supply line. I believe it's 24 volts. So if you force that down and it touches the chassis, which it obviously did, and you switch it on, you got a direct short to ground. So I believe that's what caused the failure on the voltage regulator board. But other than that, I've done nothing else to this board. I found no burnt components. I didn't really check some of the components on here. There's dual varactor diodes on this thing. That's how this thing is tuned. It's a varactor diode tuning. So basically, instead of using a tuning cap, you use a variable voltage on a diode that changes capacitance depending on how you bias it. It looks like a transistor. It's over there. There are 1, 2, 3, I believe there's 4 of them in total. And those things work very, very well. And they also allow you to easily create presets, because all you're doing is sending adjustable voltages rather than messing around with a tuning capacitor. But I'm hoping that front end is working. So I have found many excuses to procrastinate, but I finally have to plug this into the radio. In fact, I'm going to put it in temporarily. I'm going to test it, and depending on what happens, I'll get back to you. This might be a while. It's been a while already. I've taken a couple of days or 3 days working on this thing, just making sure, again, working up the courage to tackle this thing, because it is a bit iffy. It actually controls all the FM and the AM. So if this thing doesn't work, we get no radio. And that's not fun, is it? So I'm going to put this in and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. I'm not putting the shield in, the bottom shield. I'm leaving that out for now. I will put this on. I'll try and get this thing fitted in. All you need to do to fit this in is you need to plug that there. You need to plug in there. Keep this out of the way so it doesn't short. This is the FM dipole antenna. And there are 2 points on the other side, on the underside, where you have to connect ground. So I'm going to do that. See you in a while. Define a while. We'll see. Well, folks, I think you can guess from the intro to this clip what's happened. That's been put in there. It's not touching anything. It's very carefully laid down just on wires. I've connected the grounds. I've connected the mini whip antenna to the AM antenna input. And listen to this. Never has anybody been more happy to hear just static, but gets better. It works. She danced with me. It works quite well. It works very well, actually. Long wave. There's the beacon for Porto Santo. Brilliant. Shortwave. No shortwave. So medium wave's working. Getting nothing on shortwave. Never mind. That's not the important thing. The important thing is this thing's working. Let me try the FM. I'll connect one of the external, not external, it's one of those dipoles just to here. Push FM. And I've got the hiss again. And it's working, and so is the stereo light. You can't see that, but I'll show you in a minute. Oh, that's brilliant. That is so good. Let me take you closer. Now, when I tune it, that's a stereo light. I push mono, just makes it mono. Let's go back to that talk station. Sounds rather crappy, but I think somebody's on the phone. We're on lockdown, if you recall. Now, if I hit mono, that makes it pure mono. Let it go, stereo. Now, I don't remember. This is the bypass. I notice this one is in. This has got a switch. I'm not sure what that does. But I think I can just tune this.
Vocês sabem que eu não sou cantor, não é? Eu sou grande humorista, é isso que eu sou. Eu já com o bigode, ela chegou em direto no Facebook da Câmara Municipal.
So there, I don't know what that switch is for. I've got to figure it out. That's the presets. I think that's the one where you are able to tune freely. Or is that it? I'm not sure. Well, guys, that's what I've been looking for. That's what I've been hoping for. And it's such a relief. It is such a relief that I don't know, I can't describe it. Let me switch that off before something goes wrong. Now. Okay. Stereo's working, stereo light's working. There's no setup on this thing. There's a lot of stuff to set up, which I can do, but I'll get to that in a second. There's something else I've noticed which I want to show you. When I was looking for information on this particular set, I obviously went to the web first. I went to YouTube first. And I found one video where a gentleman does a restoration. Now the website or the channel is called Technomoira. And he did a pretty comprehensive look at this radio, at this set. And one of the things he found, which I found here as well, is that all these guys are broken. These things are just clipped. There's a plastic clip that comes from the back, and obviously they got dried out and they broke. And he suggested a nice solution, which is a nut, a couple of washers. There's actually a plastic spacer. I think what he used is one of those insulators that you use when you mount transistors to heat sinks, if you know what I mean. And he creates, for all three of them, I think it's three, one here, 1, 2, 3. Three of them, they're all broken. They're all sort of leaning against the side. Now, it does work, and it does turn the condenser. Oh, there's another one on top there I hadn't seen. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think the one on top is actually the only one that's not broken. It does turn, but this thing's going to go soon, so I'm going to have to fix that. And I'm going to do that. And I've got a few other things to do here cosmetically. And this time it's not procrastination. I'll tell you why I need a bit of time. I have gone through the service manual and I've created a translation of it. I have put it in, it's in Google Docs, and I have 2 files in a folder that I'm going to share. Now those are the 2 files. One is a PDF, which is the original one that I got. It's all in German. And the other one is the translated version that I've done. Now, I received quite a few offers from guys offering to help translate the manual. Well, I wouldn't ask you to do that. I really wouldn't. It's an enormous amount of work. But this one is done. It's done. This file is basically complete. It's formatted. It's in the right order, etc., etc., etc. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you wish, is to actually go to this document, download it, make any corrections that you deem necessary based on your understanding of German, which is probably better than mine or Google's, and send me or post. I don't know if you can post on my Google Docs, but send me a copy of your corrections. And I really would appreciate that, because ultimately what I want to do is I want to get this entire service manual translated, properly presented, nice and neat, and make it available to anybody who wants to download it in the future. It'll obviously be PDF when it's finalized. So every page corresponds to the page on the manual. Now the manual itself in German, it's a PDF document and it's in a crazy order. It's backwards to forwards and it's all weird. And I'm talking about the entire manual until you get to the part where it starts giving you component listings. I'm obviously not doing that. But what I would ask is, if you want to do this and if you'd like to start from the back, and the reason is the back is the part I did last. I was getting tired, really tired. And I need this last section because this is where the alignment happens. From about page 9, not so much 9, more like page 10 onwards, adjustment instructions. That's important for the alignment, which I want to do in the next video. Those pages are the most important ones to me because the first lot is the description of the circuit, which is important, and I want to have that in the final version of this document, but it's not so important to me right now. So, between myself, Google, and some of you who are pretty good at this, better than me, we perhaps will be able to come up with a proper manual for this in English, and also help me with some of the instructions that I need to actually do the fine-tuning on this thing, which I want to do, obviously. In the meantime, I've got quite a bit of stuff to do, keep me busy, other than listening to it work. But I'll give it a couple of days before I start the alignment and see what comes back. You can send it to me by email. It's in my email is in the description. It's in the About section of my channel. So you can send it back to me by email. I would rather this one didn't get altered on the net itself. I don't know if you can do that, sort of a multi-group edit. I'd prefer it if you just download it, make the adjustments, and email it back to me. That would be really great. And this would be, Google Docs uses Word format, I believe. And that'd be great. That'd be the next step. But let me show you what else I need to do in here. This board has obviously got to go in there. And I need to be very careful how I twist those clamp things on there. That's one of the things that created a short to ground and probably burnt out the voltage regulator. But something else I've noticed is that all the wiring in here is very badly placed. There are wire connectors, those plastic connectors. They've used these tie strips, but there are some of them, like that one down there. That's meant to have wires going through it. Somebody took them all out and didn't put them back. There's some more on the front here. And while I'm at it, I've got to change those caps as well. Those are the only other electrolytic caps that I can recall, other than the big guys, which haven't arrived yet. But those I'm sure I have, so I can swap them out and finish all recapping. And I need to make sure that this thing is neatened up, because this wiring is atrocious. I think we can do a much better job. Get it back to where it probably was in the beginning. And that should be fairly easy, as long as I don't disconnect anything by mistake in the process or break any wires, which happens a lot actually. When you start messing around with rerouting wires, you can create a lot of problems, but I have to do it. That's a total mess. And then of course I've got those pulleys to correct on the front there. And cleaning, I'll probably do the cleaning of the faceplate and also the knobs and everything else. Make sure everything's nice and clean. And by then, I'm sure I would have got some response to my request for translation assistance. And that's where we are. That's brilliant. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. It's unreal. It's so stupid, but it's such a thrill when this thing works. But I do recall that somebody in the comments actually said that it's probably going to work first time. And I said, yeah, hopefully. But I wasn't holding out too much hope for that, but it did. And I'm really thankful for that. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this so far. And I want to thank you for your support, all your comments, and your company. And if you did enjoy this, please click like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. And if you want to support the channel directly, you can do so on Patreon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.